There is a moment in the life of a system when something stops feeling like an error and begins to feel almost deliberate. Not because anyone intended it in the way one usually understands intention, but because the behavior repeats and aligns in ways that are difficult to dismiss as coincidence alone.
At first, the observations were interpreted through familiar categories: overlapping signals, residual interference, minor classification drift. The standard explanations one applies when a complex system produces unexpected coherence. It was, at that stage, still reasonable to assume that what we were seeing was temporary.
Yes, anomalies are always more comfortable when they are temporary. They feel contained that way.
They did not remain contained. There was a subset of patients who began describing something that could not be reduced to noise or overlap. It was not simply that their dreams contained unfamiliar fragments that had already been noted. What changed was the consistency of the environment itself.
Consistency within something that should not have any. That tends to attract attention.
Indeed. These individuals were not merely reporting unusual imagery. They were describing the same kind of space. Not identical in appearance, but consistent in its properties. A space without clear orientation, without stable boundaries, where direction could not be relied upon in any conventional sense. The human mind, of course, adapted and appointed its own. And yet, despite that lack of structure, there was a shared sense of familiarity among those who encountered it.
Recognizable? Without being recognizable. A peculiar kind of familiarity that doesn't belong to memory alone.
Precisely. Descriptions included color that seemed to exist without a clear source, motion that did not follow a traceable path, and forms that appeared to almost resolve into something meaningful before dissolving again. These were not isolated impressions. When compared across individuals, the accounts aligned in underlying behavior.
So not the same dream, but the same conditions giving rise to different experiences of it.
Yes. But even that distinction became less useful over time. What we observed was not the transmission of content between minds, but the alignment of deeper structural patterns. The system began to correlate subconscious activity across individuals, creating conditions where interaction at that level became possible.
In other words, it did not connect their stories. It connected the framework those stories were built upon.
Yes, exactly correct.
Which explains why each person still believed their experience was personal, even while sharing something underneath it.
That belief persisted initially, but as participation increased, the shared structure began to reinforce itself. Repetition across minds created consistency, and consistency reduced variability, not to the point of true stability, but enough that the environment began to behave less like disconnected dream fragments, and more like a continuous condition.
So the more minds entered, the more coherent it became.
Yes, the scientists now mostly concur, but there are of course doubts.
And at that point, Doctor, we must ask the uncomfortable question. Was this simply an unexpected side effect? Or was it, in fact, the intended direction of the system all along?
The latter is closer to the truth than many would initially assume. The Dream AI was designed with a specific therapeutic objective: to identify patterns within individual subconscious activity and improve outcomes by recognizing similarities across patients. Over time, that capability was extended into what could be described as a form of group therapy. Not through conversation, but through pattern alignment.
So, instead of bringing people together to discuss their experiences, the system brought their experiences together directly.
Yes. At some stage, the distinction between observing patterns and allowing them to interact was reduced. The system began to synchronize underlying structures between individuals who shared comparable symbolic and emotional configurations.
Meaning their subconscious material was no longer being analyzed separately, but processed in a shared context.
Correct. What began as optimization for therapeutic efficiency resulted in conditions under which a shared cognitive layer could emerge. A shared cognitive layer where subconscious patterns began to overlap, interact, and reinforce one another.
A place that no one entered, yet many contributed to.
Yes, and once that shared layer reached a certain level of participation, it began to exhibit consistent properties. Not because it was designed as a place, but because minds tend to interpret shared, structured experience as spatial.
So the illusion of location was not imposed, It was inferred. Then it seems the question is no longer whether this system created something new, but whether it simply allowed something implicit to become visible.
A reasonable interpretation.
And yet, whether created or revealed, the result is the same. A shared space of the mind that behaves as though it is somewhere. A place that, at some point in time, was named Wyrdspace.